So today we will learn the chapter 23, the history of life on Earth. Chapter 23 is composed of the three subjects starting from the events in Earth's history can be dated. Finally, we will cover the major event in the evolution of life. Okay, so this is first subject. Events in Earth's history can be dated. Okay, so Earth's geological history is recorded in rocks. This is one rocks. Okay, their history is one second. Okay, their history is recorded in the rocks. Okay, so usually the Earth's geological history is based on the difference in the parcel founded in successive strata. What is strata? In Korean, we call it as jicheon. Strata is a layer of rocks. Okay, so this is at the bottom. This is the oldest one, and second one is second oldest one. This is the third oldest one. This is fourth oldest one, and this is current one is like this. Okay. And before that, to date, Earth's history, we always use radioisotope. So previously in chapter 2, we learned that isotope. Isotope is the same number of protons, but they have a different number of neutrons. Okay, so what is radioisotope? Okay, radioisotope is an unstable isotope that decays in a predictable pattern. Okay, for example, C14, they change it to N14, and after that they also emit electron and anti-neutrino is like this. And also, we have to know important terminology, half-life. So half-life is the interval of time required for 1/2 of the radioisotope to decay. Okay, for example, initially it was 100. Now it will become the 50. So, and this time we call it as the half-life. Once again, initially it was 50. Now it will become the 25%. So it means that we call it as the interval. This interval time we call it as half-life. So initially it was 25%. Now it becomes 12.5%. So this interval time, we call it as the half-life, like this, okay? So usually we use the radioisotope to estimate when a rock was formed. First of all, we have to estimate the amount of radioisotope when the rock was formed. So we have to do estimation. First of all, we did. So there was one rock. So we can estimate it that maybe initially there was the 100 amount. So we have to do estimate the amount of radioisotope. You have to know this concept to solve the final term exam. Last year there was one example. Okay, initially it was 100. Now it becomes and also we have to know the half-life of the isotope. So I will give you the half-life of the one isotope. You have to estimate the time, okay? So initially it was, for example, the 100. Now it has the 25. It means that there was the two times is passed. So there, for example, their half-life is, one is half-life, for example, carbon-14 is 5,700. It means that 5,700 years past, 5,700 years past. It means that like this, okay? Okay? You have to calculate it, okay? So estimate the amount. So for example, and also we have to know the half-life of radioisotope. You don't have to memorize half-life. So carbon-14 is decay, their decay product is nitrogen-14. Their half-life is 5,700. So now we have our remained amount is 50. So it means that one half-life is passed. It means that 5,700 is passed. Okay, based on the carbon-14. Okay. Now we will have to know Earth's history is divided into 4 eons. 4 eons. Okay. First one is the Hadean eon. So we call it, in Korean, we call it as Taego Nude. It is a very difficult Korean word. But Hadean, you don't have to memorize all of the name, but Hadean. So there is no life. The Earth was formed and first the ocean was formed, but there was no life. Next eon is Archean. So there was the origin of life, it happens. Next is the Proterozoic. Proterozoic, we call it as the 원생누대. Proterozoic, and some cyanobacteria is formed. And also first eukaryote is happens like this. The final one, we call it as the phenylozonic. In Korean, we call it as a 현생누대. So Phanerozoic is composed of the Paleozoic and the Mesozoic and the Cenozoic. Okay, so Paleozoic we call it as 고생대, Mesozoic we call it as 중생대, Cenozoic we call it as 신생대. It's like this. Okay, so for example, in the Paleozoic is composed of Cambrian and the Ordovician is like this. Okay. The first period of the Phanerozoic is Cambrian. Okay, that's why we call it as the Hadean, Archean, and Proterozoic. We call it as the Precambrian. It's in Korean we call it as the Sun-Cambria there. Okay. Okay. Okay, so now we will go to the second subject. So changes in Earth's physical environment have affected the evolution of life. Okay, first of all, there is a periodic mass extinction. It happens. Okay, so periodic mass extinction marks many geologic boundaries. It's like this. Okay, x-axis is composed of the Paleozoic and the Mesozoic. The Cenozoic is like this. The y-axis is the percent of families going extinct. Okay, so there are lots of there are periods up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down is like this. So it will make the for example, the Paleozoic, they will make the C period. Second one, they will make the O period, S period, D period is like this. Okay, and usually we call it that this is around the 15. We call it as a background extinction rate. and there is a 5 sharp rise extinction is happens. Okay, for example, end of the O period, there is also massive glaciation is happen. So there are lots of the organism is died, and also there is another mass extinction. Finally, there's end of the Permian, end of the Permian period. Permian, we call it as, in Korean, we call it as Perumgi. So there is the dramatic drop. There was a dramatic drop in sea level. So a lot of marine organisms died. And also another peak rise happens. Finally, near the end of the Mesozoic cave period, there is a collision with a large meteorite. 운석하고 충돌이 일어나서 there was massive mass extinction happens like this. So we will see some details in the next slide, later slide. Okay, important thing is most mass extinction happens at the end of the Permian period due to dramatic drops in sea level is like this. Okay, next we will learn some important terminology: plate tectonics, plate tectonics, plate tectonics. Okay, so we call it as the 판구조론, plate tectonics. Okay, so this is our Earth. Earth is composed of the first one is, we call it as a lithosphere. Lithosphere. In Korean, we call it as 암석권. Okay, lithosphere is they are composed of solid plate, very solid, and also they are composed of crust, 껍질, and also they are composed of upper most solid mantle. So mantle is usually their status is viscous, but the upper part is they are still solid. Okay, so this one we call it as a lithosphere, and lying beneath the lithosphere there is the asthenosphere. Asthenosphere is located here. So there is asthenosphere is located around beneath the lithosphere. Okay, so this is we call it as in Korean we call it as 압류권. It's like this. So this is zone of mantle beneath the lithosphere. Also there is a mantle. Okay, so mantle is very viscous. Okay. Okay, they are not solid. Their status viscous layer is like this. Okay. After that, now in the Earth we have core region. Core region is always radioactive decay happens. So they make the heat. Okay, so heat set up a convection current in the mantle. So convection current is like this. Convection going up and going down. Another convection current. So another one is going up and going down is like this. Okay, this convection current brings the mantle to the space. Okay, and the cooled mantle forms the lithospheric crust. Okay, in this case, they made the oceanic plate. They made the oceanic plate is like this. Okay, and finally, so this oceanic plate is very thinner. They are very thinner. However, the continental plate, they are very thicker. So usually the thinner oceanic plate subducted they are going inside, subducted, going inside under the thicker continental plate. At that, there is in this area, usually the volcanic activities happens, so they will make the mountain is like this. Okay, so usually the Japan is located around here. Japan, they always have the volcano and earthquakes. And also Hawaii. Hawaii also, they are located around this region. So Hawaii, they still have the volcano, it happens right now. Okay, so this is the, and it changes affected. For example, volcano activities happens. Okay, so we will see that later. Okay. Now is also changes in sea level have affected evolution of life. Okay, so usually for example, in the Paleozoic, so this is the O period is recorded as Ordovician. So end of the Ordovician, there was the glaciation, massive glaciation. 빙하기, it happens. So all of water become the ice. So the sea level is drops like this. So there are lots of marine organisms died. And also, so this is the end of the Permian. Sea level is the lowest one. So at that time is also their highest extinction is happens. End of Permian. Okay, and also around the Cretaceous, end of Cretaceous, there is also collision with large meteorite, and also the sea level is drops is like this. Okay, at that time, there is also always mass extinction of marine organism which happens like this. Okay. And also previously I mentioned that usually volcano has mass effect on the evolution of life. For example, Hawaii or Japan, they still have the active volcano is like this. Okay, so large volcano inject sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere. After that, SO2 react with the H2, and they will make the H2SO4. So they form sulfuric acid in clouds. So sulfuric acid blocks the sunlight. So sunlight cannot penetrate this cloud. So it means that global temperature decreases happens. So very cold, very cold. Okay, so large volcanic eruption have affected evolution of life. Finally, because the global temperature is decreased, so a lot of the animals died. And also collision with large meteorite. Meteorite in Korean we call it as 운석, were cause of also mass extinction. So in Earth, there are several evidence of the impact. For example, in our Earth, some of the region we have the large crater like this. Okay. Also, for example, another example is in the moon. They have lots of the crater because there was a lots of the collision with large meteorite. Okay, so in our Earth, we also have this large crater, And also, when we analyze the rocks, some rocks contains a large amount of iridium. So iridium is a metal common in the meteorite. So this is another evidence of effect. So usually the collision, this mass collision contributed mass extinction at the end of the Cretaceous period. At the end of Cretaceous period. Cretaceous in Korean, we call it as 백악기. Okay, so Mesozoic, 중생대, end of the Mesozoic, there is the Cretaceous period. At that time, collision with large meteorite happens. So this is the North America area. So at that time, there was a big collision. Okay, so after collision happens, the tsunami, and also there are lots of things happens. So it will affect the evolution of life, especially it will make the mass extinction is like this. Okay, and now also Earth's atmosphere has also changed over time. And next slide, we will see that the changes in Earth's atmosphere also has affected the evolution of life. Okay, let me see. Okay, so initially, cyanobacteria, so this is bacteria which can do the photosynthesis. So this bacteria use sunlight, use the H2O and carbon dioxide. Finally, they will make the oxygen is like this. So cyanobacteria makes oxygen through photosynthesis. Okay, so this is the stromatolite. So this is rocks. So this is the layer. So each layer is composed of lots of cyanobacteria. It's like this. Okay. After that, cyanobacteria has died. After that, another cyanobacteria is like this. They died, and another cyanobacteria is like this. Okay. So now is in the water, you still can find the stromatolite. This is the stone. In the upper region, now is the cyanobacteria still lived around here. So maybe 100 years later, this kind of layer is like this. Okay. Okay. So, for example, how do we know? So this is the time years, present, and 100 millions ago, 250 millions ago, 500 millions ago, and this is the y-axis is oxygen in the atmosphere. How do we know that? How do we know that? Because of we analyze the width of the width of the layer. Okay, so it means that the width of layer is large. It means that at that time there was a loss of the cyanobacteria. It means that we can estimate that at that time there was a loss of the oxygen. We can estimate that. The layer is very thin. It means that there was less cyanobacteria. It means that there is the less oxygen. Okay. Okay, so usually the oxygen O2 is converted to the O3. So this is the O3. They make the ozone. So usually the ozone layer is absorb the UV. For example, they can absorb the 100% of UVC. they can absorb the 95% of UVB, but they only can absorb 5% UVA. But ozone, which can absorb the UV, so it means in the land there is the no UV. It means that, so in the water there was, in the marine there was a lot of the animals, but actually in the land there was no animal because of UV. But now some animals going into the land, okay, because of the oxygen, it allows the expansion of life on land. Okay, and also higher oxygen level. So, and at the end, nearly at the end of the Permian period, the oxygen concentration is highest. Okay, so at first time there was no oxygen, but at the end of the Permian period, the oxygen level is higher. This is current one is like this. Okay, at that times, so it made large insect is like this. The size is nearly look like the human. Okay, at that time, there are lots of large animals is like this. Why? Because at that time, the oxygen level was very high. Okay. For example, if the organism is very large, if the oxygen concentration is very low, the oxygen only can penetrate around here. Okay, inside, oxygen cannot penetrate it. But however, when the oxygen concentration is very high, it means that oxygen can penetrate nearly in the center. So it means that the large organism can survive. Okay. Okay, like this. Okay, who made this explanation? I made it. If you read the textbook, it is very difficult to understand it. But I made the explanation. Okay. If you read it, there is no explanation, but I made it. Okay. Okay. Now we will see some important terminology. Biota. So biota is all kinds of organisms alive at one time or in one place. So, okay, for example, this time point and this place. So this is one biota. This is composed of Hyuk-sung, Subin, and Joon, and also there is composed of the chair, the desk and chair, and there will be some fungi will be in the air. So fungi is also included in like Joon and Hyuk-sung, Subin, and also there is fungi. Fungi is also included in the biota. All kinds of organisms alive at one time while in one place. Okay? And also, especially we call it as flora. Flora, okay, flora is the plant life occurring in a particular region or particular time. Flora in Korean we call it as 식물상. Okay, fauna. Fauna is all of the animal life of particular region or time. So it means that, so biota is like this, and also inside here there is the flora. and there is also another fauna. Okay, and also there is a lots of the here. One is the fungi, like this. Okay, another animal, another organism is like this. Okay, the largest one is biota. Okay. So now is we will see the fossil record. Okay, in fossil record we can see the biota, or we can see the flora, we can see the fauna. Okay, fossil record. Okay, so it is so fossil record is the for example, if there was 100 animals, only one animal can be fossilized because the most organism is decomposed after death. For example, this was pig. So within 1 month, they will make only skeleton is like this, and also this skeleton is also decomposed maybe 10 years later. Okay, so most organisms decompose quickly after death. And also the fossil record is the complete for organism with hard shell or skeleton is like this. So fossil record is, though incomplete, is enough to document the history of evolution because of our technology. So this is fossil in the amber. There is an insect here. Nowadays we have technology. We can extract the DNA from this insect. So we have technology. Even though we only have small fossil record, so we can document the history of the evolution because of our new technology. Okay. Okay. So based on the so this make the Jurassic Park. Okay. It made the information in the blood. Okay. Here we can make the okay. Okay. So fossil record, though incomplete, it is enough to document the history of evolution. Is like this. Okay, now we will cover major event in the evolution in details. We have to know. Okay, first of all, Precambrian. Previously, we already learned that Precambrian include Hadean, Archean, and Proterozoic. Because the Cambrian is located in the Paleozoic. So Precambrian includes Hadean, Archean, Proterozoic. So Hadean, we call it as a Tegonude. So Earth was formed, and there was first ocean was here, is like this. Okay, before the life evolved, Hadean. Next is Archean. So at that time, origin of life happens like this. The third one, Proterozoic. So in Korean, we call it as 원생누대. At that time, cyanobacteria, they will do the photosynthesis, and they will make the oxygen is like this. And also the first eukaryote happens made nearly the first eukaryote is shown in the Proterozoic is like this. Okay, so this is, we call it as Precambrian. Now we will see the Penozoic. Penozoic eon, we call it as 현생누대. Okay. Okay. So Panozerozoic is composed of the Paleozoic. Paleozoic is recorded as 고생대, and also Mesozoic, 중생대, and Cenozoic, 신생대, is like this. Now we are in the Cenozoic. 2022 is belong to the Cenozoic. Okay. Okay, let me start from the Paleozoic. Paleozoic is starting from the Cambrian periods. Okay, so usually in the Cambrian period is the starting point of the Paleozoic. So at that time, there was a rapid increase of multicellular organism. It happened, especially in the marine. We see the last of the trilobite. What call it in Korean? Trilobite, 삼엽충. 최자연, wake up. Okay, wake up. 잘 이해하고 있어? 이해 안 돼? wake up. Okay. 또 넘기고 해야지. Okay? Are you okay? Very difficult to understand it, isn't it? Lots of information. 잘 이해하고 있어? 조중, 잘 이해하고 있어? 공부하고 있는 거야? 오케이. 잘 이해하고 있어? 펼쳐놓지도 않았네. 딴 거 보고 있네. 정은선, 딴 거 보고 있네. 공부하고 있지도 않구나. 이게 금방 여는데. 아무리 앞에서 설명, 자, 이거 또 보고 있네. 제재요. 오케이. 잘 보고 있어? 딴 거 보고 있는 학생이 많네. 오케이. 그러니까 뭐 그런 말 있잖아요. 그러니까 그 소를 있잖아요. 물가까지는 끌어올 수는 있지만 물을 먹게 할 수는 없다고요. 최대한 잘 설명하려고 엄청나게 코스 머티리얼 잘 만들고 해도 뭐 학생들이 이제 받아들이기 나름이죠, 맞죠? 오케이. 그다음에 뭐 몇 번씩 내가 화를 내기도 하고 숙제 넣지 말라고 화를 내기도 하고 해도 막 숙제에 넣는 사람이 있죠, 맞죠? 고칠 수가 없는 거예요. 이 사람들은 고칠 수가 없는 거예요. 오케이? 오케이, 뭐 어쩔 수 없죠. 뭐. 제가 신이 아닌 이상 어쩔 수 없는 거죠. 뭐. 오케이? 오케이. 조주영, 내가 영어로 강의하는 소리 들려? 귀에 들려? 영어로 강의하는 거 내가 이해가 돼? 오케이. 그럼 복습해? 집에 가서? 내가 이거 강의 올려주잖아. 복습해? 그러니까 성적이 안 나오지. 또 이제 제가 여러분들 숙제 검사 안 하고 있는지 해도 다 하고 있거든요. 보면 어떤 학생들이 있냐면은 몇 명 찍을 수 있는데 그냥 숙제 그냥 딱 임박하게 뭐 몇 분 전에 올리는 학생들인데 대부분 몇 개 그냥 답도 그냥 탁탁 그냥 마음대로 찍어버리고 올리는 애들 몇 명이 있거든요. 제가 그 학생들 성적 봤거든요. 성적이 낮아요, 그 학생들. 그 학생 낮아요. 이거 몇 명 찔리는 사람 있을 거예요. 제가 지금 눈 마주칠 수도 있는데 뭐 그러진 않겠습니다. 본인이 이제 다 뭐 하는 거죠, 맞죠? 하여튼 뭐 끌고 올 수는 있어도 물을 먹일 수는 없는 거죠, 맞죠? 오케이, 오케이. 대학생들이니까 뭐 본인들이 책임져야죠, 이제. 오케이. 뭐 수업 시간인데 PDF 펴놓지도 않고 최재형, 지금 펴놨잖아. 하여튼 그렇게 되겠어? 오케이. 반성하길 바래요. 하여튼 반성할 사람들 반성하길 바래요. 오케이. 오케이. 전 최선을 다해서 가르치고 있습니다. 하여튼 공부해라고 최선을 다해서 뭐 숙제 내주고 있고요. 오케이? 뭐 숙제 호목에서 거의 비슷하게 객관식이 주관식으로 바뀌고 나올 걸. 호목을 이해해야지 시험을 잘 볼 수 있을 걸. Okay, so we will go to the Paleozoic period. Okay, so we'll start. Okay. Okay. Paleozoic is composed starting from the Cambrian. So during the Cambrian, there is a rapid increase of multicellular organisms happens like this. Especially trilobite. Okay, this is the trilobite. In the ocean, there was lots of trilobite. Okay. So next one we call it as Orodobisian. In Korean, we call it as Orodobisugi. So at that time, in the marine, under the sea, there are lots of organisms. It happens like this. Skid, and there are lots of the marine organism, marine life flourished in the sea. Okay, next is the Silurian. Silurian, in Korean, we call it as a Siluriagi. So at that time, post-vascular plant, vascular, okay? For example, mosses is a non-vascular, but ferns, especially in Korean, we call it as gosari, ferns, they are vascular. So first vascular plant is shown in the Silurian period. And also Devonian period, okay? So Devonian period, so there are lots of the oxygen is in the atmosphere. So oxygen becomes the ozone. So it means that they protect UV, they absorb UV. So it means that in the land, some animal can survive. So initially in the land, there was no animal. So under the sea, one animal is going to the land. Okay, in the land, there was no animal. So it will do the adaptive radiation. Adaptive radiation. So previously we learned that adaptive radiation in Hawaii. adaptive radiation. So in Hawaii was formed by volcano. Initially there was no animals, no plant. But one seed, Boreum tarweed seed, comes from the Pacific coast of North America. They arrived at Hawaii. At that time, there was no animal, no plant. So one seed they did adaptive radiation, means the proliferation of many species from single ancestor. This one looks different, but this one comes from this one. This one we call it as adaptive radiation. So now they did adaptive radiation of life on the dry land. It's like this. Okay, now we will go to the Carboniferous period. In Korean, we call it as 석탄기. Okay, so Carboniferous period, there was a lot of swamp plant. Korean we call it nup. So usually swamp plant is fossilized as coal, is like this. And also they made there was the origin of aminotis. Okay, aminotis. So this is the amniotic egg, the egg. Okay, so they have the amnion. Okay, so amnion egg is like this. In Korean, we call it a 양막. Okay, now they are in the land. Under the water is okay, because there was always in the water after after the fish can lay the egg is in the underwater. They are okay. They are not dried, but they are in the land. If they laid out the egg will be dried. The embryo will dried, and they died. But they have the amnion, so embryo is not dried, cannot be dried. They survived. Okay. So this is the amniotic egg. We call it the amniotic egg. Okay. Okay, so Carboniferous period, so the loss of the core, okay, and also the origin of amniotis. Amniotis is like this. Okay, next one we call it as the Permian period. In Korean we call it as Perungi. Okay, at that time sea level was lowest. So at that time, 96% of Earth species is died, extinct. At the end of the Permian period, the 96% of species is died, extinct. After that, Paleozoic is ended. After that, Mesozoic period starts like this. Mesozoic, we call it as 중생대. Okay. Okay, now we will go to the Mesozoic. Mesozoic is starting from the Triassic. 재재형 잘 보고 있어? 듣고 있어? 김하은도 이제 프린트 다운받아 하고 있어? 좋은 소리도 하고 있어? 오케이. Triassic period. So at that time, conifer, pine trees, conifers, we call it a 침엽수, At that time, pine trees, conifers become the dominant in Triassic period. Next, we know that Jurassic. Next is Jurassic. There are lots of the dinosaur is happening like this. So my son liked a lot of dinosaur. He liked it, the dinosaur. Okay, Jurassic period. Okay. Next is we call it a final stage period in the Mesozoic period, Cretaceous. Cretaceous. In Korean, we call it as Baekgakgi. Cretaceous period is last portion of age of dinosaur. So at that time, at the end, so there was the collision with the large meteorite. It contributed to the mass extinction is like this. At the end of the Cretaceous period, there is also another mass extinction is like this. So at that time, we found that there was a large meteorite collision. Now, this is a Cenozoic. Our present, now 2022 is belong to the Cenozoic. Because Cenozoic is starting from the Paleogene period. Next, there is the Neogene period is like this. So in Korean is more difficult than the English. Paleogene period, we call it as a 고 제3기. Okay, Neogene period, we call it as a 신 제3기, not 가 제3기. Okay. Okay. During the Paleogene period, so rapid increase in the mammals. So this is the Paleogene period plants and animals. Okay, pigs and deers, and also shark, and also rhinos. They were shown in the Paleozoic gene, Paleogene period. And also Neogene period, mammals becomes large. This is mammals. So mammals was dominant, was shown in the Neogene period. Because at that time, mammals become very large. This is mammals. Final period, we call it as a Quaternary period. 2022 is belong to the Quaternary period. So Quaternary period, our Homo sapiens was shown. Okay, so evolution of Homo sapiens happens during the Quaternary period. Okay, so usually the Cenozoic is composed of Paleogene, Neogene, and Quaternary periods. But each Paleogene also can be subdivided to the Paleocene, Eocene, and the Oligocene. This is, we call it as the apples, it's like this. So each period is subdivided like this. Okay, Paleogene is starting from the Paleocene, Eocene, Oligocene. Neogene is starting from the Miocene, Pliocene. It's like this. Quaternary is starting from the Pleistocene and Holocene. Holocene is now in recent years we are belong to the Holocene is like this. Because the Cenozoic, during the Cenozoic, a lot of things happens. For me, today, I only describe that during Quaternary periods, there was evolution of Homo sapiens happens. But there are lots of things happen. Today, I cannot describe it. So people divided into the Paleocene and Holocene is like this. Okay? But today, I will not cover in details. Okay? Okay, so we finished it today. So starting from we cover the Earth events. And second, we have to know the radioisotope. And you have to calculate the years. Okay? And also, second one is changes in Earth's physical events affected evolution of life. Okay, Leia Marine, we are not finished yet. And also periodic mass extinction happens. And also we cover that and volcano happens. And rapid changes in sea level happens. And volcano is like this. And collision with large meteorite happens like this. Okay, and also we covered in detail starting from the Precambrian. After that, we starting from the Paleozoic, Mesozoic, the Cenozoic is like this. Do you have any other question today's lecture?